most situations in our lives, it all starts with setting healthy boundaries. That way, you don't always feel as if you're obligated to your parents. And you do this by asking yourself a few questions. Uh, One, do you often feel guilty, resentful, or stressed when it comes to your parents? Do you feel like you have to do everything they say, even if it goes against your own wishes, needs, morals, and values? And do you feel like you owe them everything, even if they hurt you or neglected you in the past? So, if you've answered yes to any of these questions, then chances are you're probably struggling with feeling obligated to your parents. And this is a common issue that many adult children face, especially if they grew up in a family where emotional parentification, manipulation, or some kind of abuse has occurred or was reoccurring throughout your childhood. And do a quick definition check before we move on. Emotional parentification is a form of role reversal where the child becomes responsible for the emotional well being of their parent. The parent may rely on the child for comfort, support, validation, or companionship while they are neglecting the child's own emotional needs. This can create a sense of obligation, guilt, and dependency in the child, even once they've grown up. You could also kind of compare and contrast uh, emotional parentification with uh, emotional incest. They aren't quite the same, but they exist in the same realm. Manipulation is a form of psychological control where the parent uses various tactics to influence their child's behaviors, thoughts, or feelings. The parent may use threats or guilt trips, bribes, or praise to get their child to do what it is that they want while also ignoring the child's preferences, opinions, or feelings. This can create a sense of obligation because of fear and confusion in the child as they grow up. And abuse is a form of physical, emotional, or sexual harm where the parent violates the child's rights, dignity, or safety. The parent may use violence, insults, or coercion to hurt, humiliate, or exploit the child in some way while denying the child's own reality, identity, or worth. Essentially, they gaslight them into accepting whatever type of abuse is being given to them. And this also creates a sense of obligation, shame, and trauma in the child as they grow up. Feeling obligated to your parents can have negative consequences for your mental health, your physical health, relationships, your career, and so on and so forth. You may experience anxiety, depression, anger, low self esteem, an array of different symptoms. You may neglect your own needs, you neglect your boundaries, you neglect your goals and achievements. You may have difficulty forming or maintaining healthy and satisfying relationships with other people. You may also have trouble pursuing your own dreams, passions, or interests. However, feeling obligated to your parents is not inevitable or irreversible. You can learn to set healthy boundaries with your parents and free yourself from that burden of obligation. So let's talk about the steps and how you. So, the first step to setting healthy boundaries with your parents is to recognize and validate your own feelings. You have the right to feel whatever you feel, whether it's anger, sadness, guilt, or whatever else. Your feelings are not wrong, bad, or selfish. They are natural and understandable responses to whatever it is that you're experiencing. To recognize and validate your feelings, you can use different strategies like journaling, write down your thoughts and feelings so that it can help you process and express them. It can also help you identify the patterns and triggers and whatever the source is that's fueling your emotions and feelings. Next, you need to seek therapy. Talking to a professional therapist can help you explore and understand your feelings. A therapist can also help you heal from any trauma, abuse, or neglect that you could have possibly experienced in your childhood or even your adulthood. And last but not least, you can join a support group. Joining a support group of people who have similar issues with their own parents can help you feel less alone and more supported. You can also learn from the experiences and get insight of others who've overcome or are overcoming their feelings of obligation to their parents. Second step to setting healthy boundaries with your parents is to define and communicate those boundaries. Boundaries are the limits that you set for yourself, not necessarily for others, but for yourself regarding what you are comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. Boundaries can be physical, emotional, or behavioral. They can also vary depending on the situation or the person or the connection or relationship that you have with them. So, to define and communicate your boundaries, you can use strategies such as creating a list of things that you're willing and unwilling to do, say, or accept from your parents. For example, you may be willing to visit with them once a month, but not every week. You may be willing to listen to their advice, but not just follow it blindly. You may be willing to help them financially, but not to the point that you're sacrificing your own needs. You also need to use assertive communication. This way, you have the ability to express your boundaries clearly and yet still be respectful. Assertive communication involves stating your feelings, your needs, and requests without violating those of others. For example, you can tell your parents, "Well, I feel hurt when you criticize my life choices. I need you to respect my decisions. Please stop making negative comments about my life." And lastly, you need to be consistent and firm. Be consistent while enforcing your boundaries. You don't let your parents guilt trip or manipulate or coerce you into changing or breaking, crossing your own boundaries. If they do, you need to take a opportunity to remind them of the boundaries and the consequences that you have in place if they violate them. For example, you can say, "I've told you before that I don't appreciate your interference in my relationship. If you continue to do so, I'm going to have to limit our contact." Because, like we stated before, you set boundaries for yourself so that you control how you think, feel, and how you act or react to other people. You can't control them. So you have to put a boundary in place and follow through with whatever consequence you've set for said boundary. This is how you control your actions so that your boundaries are not crossed by other people. A third step to setting healthy boundaries with your parents is to manage your expectations and your reactions. You cannot control how your parents will respond to your boundaries, but you can control how you'll respond to their responses. Like I said before, you can also prepare yourself for the possible outcomes and challenges that may arise due to you following through with the consequences to the violation of your boundaries. So, first, you need to anticipate that your parents may resist, reject, or resent that you made boundaries. They might feel hurt, angry, or betrayed by your attempts to assert your independence and autonomy. They may also try to test, ignore, or undermine your boundaries. Do not take their reactions personally or let them deter you from keeping your boundaries. Remember that their reactions are more about them than they are about you. Next, you need to practice self care. Practice self care to cope with the stress, the guilt, or anxiety that comes from setting boundaries with your parents. Self care involves taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional needs. For example, you can exercise, eat well, sleep enough, meditate, relax, or just do an activity that makes you feel truly happy. And then, last but not least, you can seek support from people who understand and respect your boundaries. These can be your friends, your partner, a sibling, or other relatives, coworkers, a support group, your therapist. You can seek help from a counselor or a coach. Any type of support that you trust and that you can maintain can help you feel validated, encouraged, and empowered as you go through this phase of boundary setting with your parents. In the end, feeling obligated to your parents is a common issue that many adult children face, especially if you grew up in a family where emotional parentification, manipulation, or abuse has occurred. Feeling obligated to your parents can have negative consequences for your mental health, your physical health, your relationships and career. However, feeling obligated to your parents is not the end all be all, nor is it irreversible. You can learn to set healthy boundaries with your parents and free yourself from the burden of that obligation that you're feeling. And you do this by recognizing and validating your feelings, define and communicate your boundaries, manage your expectations and reactions. And remember that setting healthy boundaries with your parents is not a sign of disrespect, gratitude, or selfishness. It's a sign of respect, gratitude, and love for yourself and also for them. By setting healthy boundaries, you can create a more healthy, balanced, harmonious, and fulfilling relationship with your parents.